There are two new lawsuits that have arisen around Trump's trans service member ban. And let's give you a little more information about who's filing them and who's behind them, because they're pretty compelling. The first is from the ACLU. The ACLU's Maryland branch filed a lawsuit right after the trans ban came into effect, and then was last Friday during the news dump brought up again by Trump through a more formal issuance. The ACLU just tweeted, "We'll see you in court." Well, that has come to fruition. They have 5 transgender service members. There's a 9-year veteran, a 10-year veteran, a 6-year active duty airman. It's kind of amazing. There's a 13-year veteran, a 16-year veteran trans service member. They're all behind this. The second is by Lambda Legal and Outserve SLDN, and there's a 12-year veteran involved in that, and then 2 folks who want 2 trans individuals who are trying to join the service, and one of them is Drew Lane. There was here he is. There was a Daily Beast did a kind of an expose, an article introducing Drew Lane, who wants to join the military in the Air Force as a survival, evasion, resistance, and escape specialist. And here's what Drew said for himself. He said, "In my experience, anyone who is meeting the necessary requirements should be able to serve openly. I think the ban would affect a lot of people's futures. They would like to serve and protect their homeland, and it's basically cutting out people's future plans. I wanted to be part of this lawsuit to be a voice for myself and others who want to serve their countries." Right now, 16 years old.
Wow.
So, it's a super inspiring story. His mother, Laura Garza, said, as a mother, and Laura has said she agrees with Trump on certain issues, just not this one. She says, "As a mother, I've learned firsthand that this is not choice that's made. It's actually the way someone is born. It's to do with my child, and therefore I support my child in anything my child wishes to do. This is discrimination and limited to a population of people based on something extremely personal."
Yeah, so I absolutely agree with her. I'm curious to see what she agrees with Trump on, but whatever, that's not relevant. Look, that 16-year-old is amazing. The fact that he is so clear on what he wants to do, and he's a person with convictions, a person who's motivated and hungry and wants to fulfill his goals. That is the type of American that everyone in this country should be proud of, not the type of American that we should fight to take rights away from. And so, look, how many 16-year-olds do you see fighting for things like this? And even coming from a disenfranchised group of people, having the courage to come forward and say, no, this is not okay. I'm not gonna let Trump stop me from protecting my country, from serving my country. What an amazing person. And look, we all know what the transgender ban was really about. It's about doing something that goes against what Obama did during his administration, because anything that Obama did, regardless of how logical and regardless of how much common sense was behind it, Trump wants to do the opposite, right? It's like he's a child, and he wanted to pander to his base. There have been no legislative wins. He hasn't succeeded in doing anything he promised to do, and this is just an easy way of getting something done. Just going ahead, pandering to his base and saying, look, I banned transgender people from the military, which, by the way, is actually gonna cost us a lot of money, because we're gonna have to find military members to replace those who are now banned. We're gonna have to train them. We're gonna have to spend a considerable amount of resources to make sure they're prepared to be part of the military. And so it's just such a dumb, nonsensical way to go about things.
Yeah, and that's if he means it. If he means to ban them, then it will cost, what is it, $70,000 per person. There's up to 15,000 people, trans service members right now, who have joined in the time or come out in the time that it's been in effect, which is just since last year. It's ridiculous, and what's even more ridiculous is what I mean by if he means it is those folks, according to what was originally laid out in a tweet and later made more formal through this random ambiguous statement that gives a certain amount of leeway to generals to define whether the people who are in the current service are allowed to stay there.
He's crazy.
It just doesn't make any sense. And what's gonna happen is general after general has said, I don't see any reason why these folks would not be allowed to serve.
That's right, and keep in mind that this is coming at a time when Trump just gave a speech about another surge in Afghanistan. So you want to deploy more troops to a failing war and simultaneously ban an entire group of people from being part of our military.
But it was a similarly ambiguous statement about a surge.
That's right.
The way it was an ambiguous statement about the trans service members. Yeah, we should get them out. You're absolutely right, it's signaling to a base, but you leave all these folks around. We've all worked for bosses like this where it's like, we're gonna change it this way, and you're just looking around going like, how? That's literally impossible, and it doesn't help anything. That's not solving a problem. I think the mother's absolutely right when she says things like, these people have already, who are in the military, have already passed certain tests. I mean, Rand says that it's $2.0 to $4.2 million per year for the health concerns, which is a tiny fraction of the $4.93 billion yearly health budget.
Yeah,
just the health budget.
No. How about this? Let's just focus on other military waste. We did a story a couple weeks ago about how the military decided to take out a contract with a private contractor that makes uniforms, and they supplied these forest camo uniforms to soldiers in Afghanistan, Afghan soldiers. Forest camo, when the majority of terrain in Afghanistan is desert, it's not forest. And why did they do that? They just wanted to give out a contract to private contractors to the tune of $28 million. By the way, the US government has uniforms that they could have given to these soldiers for free, but they didn't do that. Yeah. So please spare me the BS about, oh, we don't have enough resources. You have resources, they're just for private contractors, not taking care of your own soldiers and members of the military that serve the country.
Now you might be wondering, when Trump issued the Muslim ban, that was stayed in courts because of certain cases brought, as the person from the ACLU, the staff attorney, Chase Strangio, points out, that is not the case with this. According to Chase, the filings don't stop the ban from going into effect. People are already having their health care withheld. People are being told they can't re-enlist or being barred from re-enlisting. The goal of the lawsuits is to stop that from happening and to put the policy on hold while the cases make their way through court, but that has not happened yet. That's frustrating, that's so frustrating.
It is really frustrating, but I commend the people who are courageous enough to fight Trump on this. You guys are amazing, keep the good fight going. I know it feels like it's not gonna happen, but I think eventually we're gonna win.
Help us build independent media. Become a member of the Young Turks. TYTnetwork.com/join.